I do gotta say, I didn't come into this whole console war late. I've seen it unveil and evolve into what it is today. I do want to say that back in the old days, man, you would ask your friends, did you play this game, that game? You never really talk about what systems some games were available. I mean, you would say like, oh, what system do you have? Sega, Nintendo, TurboGrafx, whatever, right? The only thing is like you never really thought about, oh, well, my system is better than your system. That never really existed. What did exist was the fact that, oh, dang, that's too bad. Now I can't borrow games from you. If you didn't have the same console. But in the same time, it was kind of cool because then you go over in your friend's house, or they come over, you know, play some games, and it's just like I don't know, for some reason the whole console like was never like a big war thing. It wasn't like, well, you should buy this, it's better. It was never like that. I didn't really see something like this until the N64 era. At that time, it was more or less, it was like people were saying, oh, well, the N64 is still cartridge based, and the PlayStation CD based, and that's why it's better. That's kind of, it's still, we still wouldn't really fight. I mean, I own both consoles. I bought my N64 at launch, and I bought the PlayStation when it first came out also as well. My dad actually got it for me. It was his um, first time he's ever heard of CD-based console. I mean, I've played the Saturn. I didn't own the Saturn at that time, but I went over to a buddy's house. I was playing Sega Saturn. He'd come over playing 64 at my house, and later when I got the PlayStation, he'd come over and play PlayStation. But um, still, the only thing really at that time was it's just a little arguments about what was you know better, CD or cartridge, and you know I would defend the fact that cartridge is better because of the load times and blah blah blah. But I would say, yeah, well, CD is better because you can fit more, you know you can fit more memory. Stuff isn't compressed like the N64 cartridge. We have little debates like that, and I can see how the console wars were slowly starting to build in my world, anyways. You gotta realize the internet was primitive at this time, so there's not. I'm pretty sure, you know, the way I see it is if it's unveiling like this in my world, I'm pretty sure around the world people are doing the same thing. Like, oh well, you know, little things like that, cartridge based, CD based, whatever. I really started seeing a little more around the GameCube era, Xbox, PlayStation 2, GameCube. Started getting a little bit more into more territorial. Like people would defend their consoles a little more. Like, oh, who plays GameCube? Who, like, Halo's the best thing in the world. Just little things like that. That's kind of started escalating a little more. And really around the Wii era and Xbox 360 and PS3. Oh yeah, they Full Sail. Is it gonna? Is it still gonna escalate more? I mean, who knows? All I know is that I grew up at a time where console wars was really nothing. It's not a console wars. It's all about gaming, and the console wars was between the companies, the actual companies, the way it should actually be. Companies trying to fight for your money. Sega would put out commercials and saying what Nintendo don't and stuff like that. I grew up playing all these consoles. I grew up playing the NES. Um, I vividly remember the TurboGrafx for some reason. I remember it took cards, the Game Boy, Game Gear, Super NES, Atari 2600, the bigger Atari, I can't even remember the name of that one, Sega Saturn, the Dreamcast. I do got to mention that I was a huge PC gamer back in the day too. Like I was always on the PC playing computer games, but never really saw it. Um, Never thought about it at that time that I'm playing video game. I guess it never really occurred to me. I got a buddy of mine. A big shout out to him. Rest in peace, John Thurman. That guy, he really got me into expanding more on video games. I mean, I really didn't care when I was younger, like what console I own. I mean, I always bought Nintendo consoles because I always enjoyed their games. I always have. But this guy, he really got me into. I mean, he got me hyped up with the Dreamcast. I mean, I wasn't really looking forward to the Dreamcast because I wasn't too impressed with the Sega Saturn. And he was telling me, like, the Dreamcast is gonna bring good things. It's gonna change things up a bit for gaming. And we were waiting for the launch of the Dreamcast. The concept of owning multiple consoles wasn't exactly quite there yet. I mean, it wasn't normal yet. Nowadays it's normal, but then it was, um, you just owned what you had. It wasn't like you went out and bought all these systems. It just didn't happen that way. He got me to open up the possibilities of owning, the benefits of owning multiple consoles. The console he was waiting for the most, though, was the Project Dolphin, which ended up being the GameCube. He was hyped up for that. But unfortunately, my buddy had an accident before the GameCube was even released, and he was killed. So, but rest in peace, man, and a big shout out to him. Like I said, back in that era, like the N64 era, I started kind of seeing the a little fanboyish between people and console wars, and I started defending Nintendo a lot because a lot of people were fighting the fact that, oh, they're still with cartridges, they should do CDs, and I was defending the whole cartridge thing, which I wasn't like, I wasn't biased about it, like, oh no, it's the best thing in the world, whatever, it beats CDs. No, I gave it strengths, and I did its weaknesses. I still do that to this very day. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I can really go on more about this subject, but I just want to keep the video kind of short. So, all right.